All right, testing, just making sure I am audible. Pretty sure we should be good to go. How's everybody doing today? Oh, wow, there's a fair few people in the chat. Nice. Okay, so give I look at my wrist. Wow, I am on point today. I apologize. So I'll be starting in about 3 minutes, and then this will give everybody some time to roll in and get started. And so yeah, that's the plan. Hope everybody's having a lovely Saturday or Sunday if you happen to live on the other side of the world. Um, it's a little bit dreary out here today. There might be some storms later, but we'll see. Hopefully, the internet holds out. But in the meantime, yeah, just come in, make yourself at home, come hang out. Oh, wow, there's quite a few people here. Awesome. Sweet. Hey, Proto, good to see ya. Proto's one of my I was going to say Proto's one of my brony friends, but one could argue that all of my viewers right now are my brony friends, question mark. But yeah, we have virtual popcorn. Excellent. I have I have snacks. So yeah, we'll get started in a couple minutes and then we'll get right into it. I have a spiel and stuff. Do 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 do. Hoping we don't run into any sort of technical issues along the way. But we'll see what happens. My computer's fairly robust. It should be fine. Yep. I'm seeing some folks writing in Cyrillic in the chat. I don't quite I unfortunately can't read Cyrillic, so I can't help you there. Apologies. But yeah, definitely excited to be doing this again. I had a good time at when I did it for HawkCon last year. As you can see, I'm wearing my HawkCon shirt. Figured I might as well represent a little bit. I think I got this year HawkCon year 1 if I recall correctly. Um I still haven't gotten my PoniesOnline shirt. It'll probably be delivered next week. Which means if there's another one, I'll wear it then. So good stuff. All right, so we are at the top of the hour, so we might as well get started. So for those who haven't met me before, I'm Shal or Shally, depending on who you talk to. And this is home vocal recording on a budget. I'll be giving you sort of a crash course on the world of home vocal recording, just so that you can know what you're doing and be able to get started on those projects that you want to get started on. I'll talk more about those in a bit. A couple housekeeping notes I want to mention before we get started. First, first I want to mention that this event is happening as part of PoniesOnline. So there are links in the description if folks want to take a look at the con itself, take a look at all the other programming that they're offering. There's a lot of really good stuff happening over the next 24 hours. And there are lots of awesome vendors and artists that you can come help support. And then we're also doing all this stuff for charity. We are working to support the charity Child's Play, which works to how do I phrase this? They look to improve the quality of life of children in hospitals by using video games and technology. It's a really good charity. There's a donate link in the description. please use that. I'm going to channel Alkali Bismuth here and say, if you can give, give. If you can't give, it's okay. We're bronies. We'll take care of it. But yeah, their goal isn't super high, but I want people throwing those donations in there. We can definitely make a big difference for those kids. Anyway, so with that out of the way, let's get into home vocal recording on a budget. So first I'll say what I won't be talking about for this panel, just to sort of simplify things. So for starters, I won't be covering vocal performance. I'm going to be assuming that you have vocal performance more or less on lockdown. I'm assuming that you know what you want to be doing, that you know, like, I'm going to be doing podcasting or voice acting or singing or whatever. And you know and I'm assuming that you know, like, are good enough to be able to do that. That's under your control, because every type of vocal performance is a little bit different. So not going to be getting into that here. The other thing I'm not going to be covering is live sound. This is all for recordings that, excuse me. This all takes place in the comfort of your own home. Makes it much easier, much simpler. You don't have to worry about things like feedback or like whether there are enough people in the room or stuff like that, because it's just you. I'm kind of assuming that you're going to be recording yourself. So yeah, and then so we'll just get into that. And so just so everybody knows, there will be I will be posting the recording of this panel afterward, so that people can review my suggestions. So don't feel like you have to furiously take notes while we're doing this. Also, beverages are important. Delightful. So stuff is happening. All right, so recording equipment. And this is the part that I think most people kind of get stuck on, because it's like, in order for you to be able to record, you need something to record with. So let's get into that. Now, I know that people kind of view the home vocal recording from different perspectives. Some people are just kind of getting started and just kind of want to get their feet wet. Other people want to take it a bit more seriously and maybe even make a career out of it. And so I'll be talking about this from the perspective of 3 different budget levels. And just to sort of give you an idea of what you could work with. And this will give you options depending on what is appropriate for your needs. One moment, please. I'm making some adjustments to my laptop over here. This is where I have the chat up, just so that I can see what people are saying. Hope everybody's doing okay. Oh, wow, there's a lot of people in the chat. Hi, everyone. Okay, so 3 levels. Let's talk about this. The first level of home vocal recording is the bare bones recording package. This is the one where this is like the barest minimum of stuff that you need to be able to get your voice or get vocals into a digital medium. And the way that you do that is with a smartphone. So you're going to be recording into your phone for all of this. And to do this, you need a wired lavalier microphone. This is commonly known as a clip-on mic or a lapel mic or a lav mic for short. And they plug directly into the headphone jack. Very easy. And they can be fairly inexpensive. I've seen ones that are as cheap as $15. The one that I bought, the PowerDewise lavalier microphone kit, is $22. Very, very affordable. But you can also shell out for one that costs a little bit more money. That would be the Rode SmartLav Plus, pictured here. Now, I will draw your attention to the plug. Note that it has 3 black stripes on it. It is a TRRS plug. That is the specific type of plug that you need in order to plug into a smartphone headphone jack. If it has 2 stripes, it won't work with a headphone jack. All right, wow, there's lots of folks coming in. Just 50p lavalier mics, suck inside until it's okay. Yeah, lots of stuff going on. Okay, 35 people. Awesome. Jeez, this is like one of the biggest streams I've had in a while. Awesome. So yeah, it's fairly easy to get the microphone because the microphone built into your phone is not great. The next thing you need is something to record with, like a audio recorder app usually. Um, there are various free audio recorder apps. I think iPhones come with one by default. I don't know if Android phones do, but I downloaded one called Smart Recorder. It is free and fairly easy to use. If you want to take it a step further, you can purchase FL Studio Mobile, which, in addition to recording audio, can function as a full-fledged digital audio workstation that you can use to make. You can make a full-fledged song in it if you really wanted to. So options. You obviously need a set of headphones. A head of said phones. Wow. Anyway, a set of headphones. To be able to hear yourself because the speakers on there aren't great. Just use what you have. I'm sure if you have earbuds, just go with those. Don't feel like you need to buy something special. But bear in mind that this kind of recording setup will not allow you to hear yourself while you are recording. This is a problem if you're recording something like music, but if you're doing something like a podcast or a dramatic reading or voice acting, or just like you want to have a nice camera over here looking at you and you want to have better audio, you can use this setup for that kind of thing. It's totally fine. But yeah, if you want to be able to hear yourself afterward, you're going to need headphones. And obviously, you'll need a phone. Again, use what you have. As you can see, I am depicting a fairly old smartphone here. Any phone will work pretty much as long as it has a headphone jack. And even if it doesn't, this kind of setup will work with a headphone jack adapter. So yeah, don't feel like you need to break the bank here. All right, and then what else? Okay, so next we have the good mic with free stuff setup. Again, the thing you're going to be spending the most of your money on in this setup is a microphone. So basically, this is going to be a USB mic. This is going to $50 to $100. You don't want to spend too much money here. You don't want to go below $50 here. Like I know there's a Neewer microphone that's like $20, but it sounds like a potato. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But yeah, don't go below $50. That's kind of the threshold for quality for USB mics. The Blue Snowball Ice is a good one. The Samson Meteor is a good one. I used the Samson C01U for many years. Sounded great. The Samson C01U Pro is one that is now available, and it's still under $100. I know a lot of people are a big fan of the Blue Yeti microphone. I personally feel that the Blue Yeti is overkill for most people's needs. It has a lot of fancy features on it that, if you're just recording one person, are completely unnecessary. So save yourself a little bit of money and get a cheaper microphone. What else? So microphones, and now for other stuff. So headphones. You got to have that same as before. Nothing special. You obviously this setup does require a computer, a laptop, or a desktop computer, because that's what USB mics work with. Again, use what you have. This is a fairly old laptop pictured here. Basically, if your computer can take a mic input, it should be fine. So that's fine. And then audio software. This is one that I have a bit more to say about. So there are lots of free audio software options out there. There's like GarageBand if you're on Mac. There is Pro Tools First, which is decent, but somewhat limited at times. You can only have so many tracks. I know a lot of people are a big fan of Audacity. If you like Audacity, that's great. You can use Audacity. That's fine. I personally find it to be a little bit too limited. It is because basically what ends up happening is it bakes the audio effects into the recording. So like if you wanted to apply EQ, compression, delay, and reverb, you have to apply them all in post-processing, and then If you want to change any of them, you have to undo each of the effects that you put after it to make tweaks and then redo them. It's extremely tedious and annoying and really hard to work with, which is why I definitely recommend going with a free digital audio workstation like Traction Waveform Free. This is my number one recommendation for free audio workstations. It is an extremely full-featured DAW. It is completely free. Like, you can buy a paid version if you want for some additional features, but the free version is really solid. It's extremely easy to use. It's very flexible. Can't recommend it enough. Yeah, I see Voodoo G, my friend, is in the chat, and he's a big fan of Traction Waveform as well. So before we move on to the third package, I'm going to take a drink real quick. All this talking is making me thirsty. I want to give a special shout out to field recorders. They are basically a handheld microphone and audio recorder in a convenient little box. They are very, very small. You don't need a computer or a smartphone at all. You can record pretty much any kind of audio with them, so a podcast. You can record a room with it. You can record live music. Lots of professional shows are recorded on a field recorder, and they're great for interviews, stuff like that. The Zoom H1N, which is pictured here, is a great entry-level option. This is the one that I have, and I love it to bits. It is actually smaller than my smartphone. I have a Google Pixel 3a, and this thing is smaller and more lightweight than my phone. It's ridiculous. But it's fairly solid, and the sound quality is top-notch. And it's not that expensive either, so definitely worth looking at. All right. And then, so just so everybody knows, I want to get through this last section on gear before I start diving into questions. I have budgeted time for questions, so I will come back to that. Anyway, so this is the last budget option. This is the full home studio setup. This is for people who want to take this kind of thing more seriously, for people who want to do like music recording, they want to do something that sounds professional. This is the kind of setup that I have. This is what folks like, I don't know, this is what folks like D Notive have, or I think Black Griffin has a setup like this. Basically, it's basically you're buying full-on studio equipment. Notice the bigger number. These home studios can get extremely expensive, but only as much. Basically, you could spend as much money on them as you want to. Like, you could totally buy a $100,000 mixing console if you really wanted to, but you don't need to, because as you can see on the smaller number, you can have a solid home studio without breaking the bank. So let's get into that. Microphones, once again. Again, you need a decent microphone. This time we're going with an XLR microphone. That XLR microphones are good because they are sort of the universal standard for high quality audio. See, USB microphones plug into your computer, and that's it. XLR microphones plug into everything else. They plug into audio interfaces, mixing consoles, field recorders. Some DSLR cameras have an XLR input. Some effects pedals have them. Synthesizers have them. XLR is pretty much the universal standard for good audio. So definitely recommend a good XLR mic. And also, but at the same time, you don't need to spend a ton of money on it. You can get a decent XLR mic for about $100. You don't need to break the bank. Like the Behringer B1. That is my primary workhorse microphone. It sounds great. It's easy to use. It's pretty solid. It comes in like this bulletproof carrying case, which is pretty great. And then there's our dear friend. That's what this is. This microphone right here is a Shure SM57. I put a windscreen on it, which I'll talk about later. This is a dynamic microphone, and it's pretty solid. I like it. It's a pretty great microphone. and it's used on tons of. You've heard it on probably tons of recordings. Like if you've ever heard a recorded snare drum, it was probably recorded with an SM57. And then another more pricey option that's also very popular is the Shure SM7B. Very, very good microphone. So yeah, definitely a good idea to get a mic like this. Um, you need an XLR cable. I bring this up because most microphones don't come with their own cables, so you have to buy them separately. You also don't have to break the bank on them. They can be as cheap as $8. Um, they also don't have to be super long. Like, I think the one that I'm currently using is either 7 or 10 feet. It's not that bad. Like, that's enough for most people's needs. I also have one that's like 25 feet long for when I do stuff at conventions, but that's beside the point. So yeah, cables and then a mic stand. That's what I'm using here to keep my microphone aloft, so I'm not just holding it the whole time. And the nice thing about a good microphone stand is that it allows you to put your microphone basically anywhere you want in the room. Because like this one is it's the same one that's on the screen right here. It is adjustable. You can bend it. It's telescoping, and you can put your microphone all the way up to like 8 feet in the air to down to like a foot off the ground. So it's extremely versatile. Definitely recommend. And it's way better than, in my opinion, than having one that's affixed at your desk, because like then you can't move away from your desk, and your desk isn't always an ideal recording spot. It's also better than those little dinky tripod mounts that a lot of microphones come with, because then you definitely have to be at your desk. Or you could do like what I did and put your microphone on top of a stack of boxes. Use what you have, but a mic stand definitely makes it easier, especially considering how cheap they are. Excuse me. Beverage. And then there is the pop filter. This is a tool for preventing plosives from getting into your microphone. It gives you space between. Sorry, I bumped the mic. It gives you space between the mic and your face, basically. And yeah, it helps deal with the plosives, which definitely make you sound a lot more amateur. Um, as you can see, they're also not super expensive. The one on the right is $15. Pretty solid. If you feel like being DIY, you can actually make your own pop filter using spandex and an embroidery hoop. Super easy. That's what I did for a couple years before I realized, oh wait, pop filters, they're cheap. And then you could also have a windscreen, which is different from a pop filter. It's like mounted directly on the microphone. And that's great for like protecting in like if you're using it outdoors or in live situations. I definitely prefer to have a pop filter because it helps ensure that you're not getting too close to the microphone. And then headphones. I want to talk a bit more about these. Like, you don't necessarily need to have amazing headphones, but you need to have ones that cover your ears, that are closed back, ear covering, sound isolating headphones. They don't need to be noise canceling. That's probably not necessary. But you want to make sure the sound from your headphones isn't going out into the microphone, because it makes it sound kind of trashy. The ones that we have pictured here are the MDR 7506 headphones. I use those all the time. I love them to bits. They sound great. They're rock solid. They're fantastic for hearing bass. I even use them for mixing because the frequency response is very flat. And as you can see, there are lots of other options for headphones. You could spend as much money as you want on them. You obviously are going to need a computer of some kind. If you're in the market for a new computer, more RAM is good. A better processor is also good. More USB ports means more things that you can connect. So like your audio interface, synthesizers, MIDI controllers, all that stuff. That makes it just so much easier. But yeah, you could also make the choice between a laptop or a desktop. Like, I make music on both of them, honestly. So go with what works for you. But again, don't feel like you need to buy a new computer. a digital audio workstation. I talked about these a bit before. The main difference between the free ones and the paid ones is that the paid ones have some nice extra features, usually additional plugins, advanced recording capability, built-in sample packs, virtual instruments, synthesizers, stuff like that. Definitely a lot more powerful than the free stuff, but the free stuff can still be pretty good. Um, Here are some examples of paid digital audio workstations that sort of run the gamut of price. I personally use FL Studio, the signature bundle. It has served me well over the years. The main recommendation with these is try out a bunch of different ones, figure out which one you like the best from like the one that you find easiest to use. That's probably the best way to think about it. Or just choose one that is used by a friend of yours, because that way you can sort of bounce ideas off of each other. Might make it easier. And then an audio interface. This thing is basically the heart of your home studio. It is, excuse me, my mouse is in the way. It is completely, what is it? It is very important because it allows you to record multiple inputs at the same time with zero latency or near zero latency. Latency Latency is basically the amount of time it takes for the sound to come from your mouth into the microphone, through the cables, into your computer, through your software, and out into your speakers. With standard computer sound cards, that latency can be extremely long. And that makes it basically impossible for you to record and hear yourself in real time, and that's extremely distracting. A audio interface completely fixes that problem and has a lot of nice other features. The good news is they don't have to cost a fortune. They can be pretty cheap. The Focusrite Scarlett Solo is about $100. I've seen ones that I've heard are decent that are actually less than $100. Your mileage may vary. I do encourage you to be like, you do kind of get what you pay for. Like, there is let me just sort of explain with a lot of this gear. If you spend a lot of money, that's going to be marginally better than the more affordable stuff. But like below a certain point, the equipment gets really, really bad. So it's very much a diminishing returns factor. Like a $50 audio interface is going to be a potato probably compared to a $100 audio interface, but a $500 audio interface is likely not going to be that much better than a $100 one. Though with audio interfaces, you're mainly paying for more inputs. Anyway, I'm getting in the weeds. I apologize. I'm rambling. So let me move on to some other bits. Some extras that you can have. Acoustic treatment. That is a way for you to prevent the weird echoey noises or room sound from interfering with your recordings. It's nice to have. It's definitely good to have if you're doing something like voice acting, but I wouldn't say that it is necessary. There are DIY solutions that I'll talk about in a little bit. Another thing that's good to have is a set of high-quality reference monitors, what they call studio monitors. They are speakers that are designed to represent the audio in a very flat, accurate way without artificially flattering it, so that when you listen to your sound on them, and then you can listen to your music in other places, it'll still sound good. But again, those are optional. I wouldn't say that they are strictly necessary. But my ultimate point with all of this is that you don't need to spend millions of dollars on a home studio. You don't need to have a ridiculous setup like Hans Zimmer here with like a bajillion speakers, 6 monitors, and apparently a couple gigantic modular synthesizers in the background. You don't need to do that. Your home studio setup can be a bit more meager. This is my home studio setup. It's a bit smaller, but it has all the pieces that I need in order to make the music that I want to make. So, yeah, that's, like I said, don't feel like you need to break the bank. Okay, so before I move on, I'm going to take a look at the chat and see if we have some questions. I love the ponies as a watermark. Yup, me too. Let's see. All right, check in. How are you doing? Waveform Pro. Yeah, Waveform Pro is fairly cheap. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the chat. I'm not going to be able to get through all of this. Wow, lots of people. The AT2020, the M Audio AT2020 is also a very good microphone. Definitely recommend. Version, is it user friendly? Yeah, waveform is definitely user friendly. I apologize. Stuff, lots of stuff. Okay, scrolling back down to the beginning. How do you pick a microphone? What is suitable for your voice? Good question. So I definitely recommend. Okay, so 9 times out of 10, you're just going to go with a standard condenser microphone. If you have to pick one microphone to use for everything, get a large diaphragm condenser mic. Those are like your Blue Sparks, your Behringer B1s, stuff like that. They are, I think the AT2020 is also a large diaphragm condenser mic. That'll sound good on basically everybody. The difference between the tonal qualities of different mics is pretty small. I think if you have the money for it, get multiple microphones that are very different from each other and experiment to see which one sounds good with you on a given day. Like, I have a condenser mic and a dynamic mic. Depending on what I'm going for, one sounds slightly different from the other, but the differences are actually pretty small. So I might do like a microphone shootout on my channel at some point to give people an idea. But it's really, you're really not, it doesn't make as much of a difference as people realize. It's just as long as the microphone is of decent quality and you're using it correctly, it'll be fine. So don't worry about like choosing the right mic. It's like choose one that is reasonably priced, is from a recommended company, and is probably a large diaphragm condenser. Condenser versus dynamic. Condensers are a good starting point for vocals just because they sound good on basically everything. A dynamic mic also sounds good on vocals. It doesn't have quite as much high end, but it's not that noticeable. The nice thing about a dynamic mic is that they are extremely durable. You can like scream into them, you can beat them up, you can take them traveling, and they'll be fine. Whereas a condenser mic is a little bit more finicky. So, like, if we were talking in pony terms, dynamic microphones are Applejack, and condenser microphones are rarity. I hope that helps. Okay. Yeah. So I'll probably look for more. I want to be conscious of people's time, so I'm not gonna. So I'll be looking at the. I'll be checking out the chat as we go. There will be other opportunities for questions throughout. Can you shatter glass with your voice? No, I personally cannot. I don't know the technique to do so. Okay, so yes, let's talk about this a bit. So now that we have equipment, let's talk about how to use it to make the most of it. So for starters, you have to be careful about which room you're recording in. If you have a choice of recording room, choose the one that sounds the best. Choose the one that has the best acoustics. You can generally determine that based off of like, is there a flutter echo? Is there like a weird reverberation? Is it very close to the street? Is it really small? Or bigger rooms tend to be a little bit better than smaller rooms, but it varies. Yeah, just go with the room that sounds the best. But if you have just one room to record in, you can still make it work. Do your best to reduce the noise in the room. So like I currently have my doors closed, just to sort of prevent the noise from the house coming in. My computer's currently whirring in the background, so you can probably, if there's a way for you to turn off the computer fan or maybe move it off to the side, that would help. Obviously silence your phone, remove any jangly jewelry that you're wearing. That definitely makes a big difference. And then there are other things that you can do to improve the sound quality of your room that are fairly cheap. Like you can put blankets on the walls, you can hang curtains over any windows. You could have carpets, you could put down a rug, you can have large, dense furniture like a bed or a sofa. Um, if you really want to, you could potentially record. Two options if your rooms are particularly bad is one, record in a linen closet because all of those towels and blankets and bed sheets are they're basically acoustic treatment, and it's a lot more acoustically muffled in there. And the other option, and one that I'm a particularly big fan of, is to take a chair, turn it upside down, put it on a table, drape a large puffy coat or like a quilt over top of it, and then put your microphone inside, and now you have a DIY vocal booth. There are lots of people who have started doing like at-home voice acting doing this setup. I'm pretty sure No Whacking did this setup for a while. I see one question in the chat. How to have an appropriate room when you live with people? Yeah, so it is a little bit easier for me because I live alone currently. But if you have a roommate or something, the main thing is to record at a time when you're not going to be disturbing them or when they're not going to be disturbing you. If you have roommates and you say, hey, I need to be recording something, please tell them that you're going to, like, let them know that you're going to be recording, and hopefully they'll be courteous enough to give you some space. If you have particularly noisy neighbors upstairs, like I said, just record at a time that they're going to be least noisy. That's the best suggestion I have. If it gets particularly bad, a third option for it's a weird option, but it works. Record in your car. A car is a surprisingly good acoustic environment. And then, okay, so yeah, let's see what's next. All right, so let's talk about mic placement. I love mic placement. It's fun. All right, so here's the idea. The first thing that you want to do is you want to put your microphone in the center of the room, away from any walls or windows, and put your vocalist directly in front of the mic. I'm assuming that's you. The center of the room is better because that way it's less likely to reverberate weirdly. So that's good. And then you want to position the microphone so that the grill, the front of the mic, the grill of the mic is at eye level with you. And then once you have it at eye level, you take the microphone and you tilt it down towards your mouth. By having it closer to, basically the idea is by having it above and pointing it down, which is kind of what I'm doing here, is it gets it out of the way of the air coming out of your face. So like the air from your face holes goes out and down. By putting your microphone above it, it is directly, you're putting it so that it's not directly in the path of the air. And that makes a big difference. And then you want to place your pop filter. The pop filter, I usually use my fist as a means of determining how far apart the pop filter is from the microphone, but that's everybody's hand is a little bit different. But this is a good rough gauge. You don't want the pop filter to be directly on the microphone because it's not going to have space to do its job. And it's also not great for mic placement, for like personal placement. And then what else is there? Okay, so this is kind of what it looks like when the microphone is in place and the pop filter is where it needs to be. Like the pop filter needs to be directly between you and the microphone so that it can do its job. Now let's talk about how far we want to be from the mic. So there's distances. If you get closer to the microphone, you can bring out the nuances of your voice. You can experience more. You can sort of it's better for like hearing just your voice and not the sound of the room around you. But at the same time, you have to be quieter and. Oh, I'm quiet. Sorry, I can turn that up. Better. So yeah, if you get really close to the microphone, you hear more spit noises, which is not a good thing, and it sounds gross. So you have to be careful about that. By contrast, if you are farther away from the microphone, you have to be much, much louder for the microphone to hear you correctly. But being farther away is good if you A, need to scream at the mic, and B, you have a room that sounds good. You have a room that is very has an acoustically pleasant sound. Okay, cool. So there's that, and then there's also something else. There's a little thing called the proximity effect, which is what happens when you get very, very close to a cardioid microphone. Let me demonstrate. In a world where people are using microphones correctly. That's the proximity effect, where people are very, very close and super boomy into the microphone. They're doing it because they're basically eating the microphone. So if you don't want that, back off the mic. If you do, yeah, you want to basically eat the microphone. But if you don't want that kind of sound, and a lot of times it sounds kind of amateurish or inappropriate for a lot of uses, so you want to back off a little bit. So that brings me to my general rule of thumb for distance from the mic. 8 to 12 inches. And I usually measure that by using my hand. Again, this is going to differ from person to person based off of hand size. But generally speaking, if my hand is like that on the pop filter, that means I'm about 8 inches away. If my fingers are splayed like on the right, that means I'm about a foot away. And that kind of 8 to 12 inches safe spot is good for it having a good balance between room sound, direct sound, and proximity effect. Yeah, it's not close enough to get the proximity effect, but it is also far enough away that you're not going to hear your mouth and stuff like that. So that's a good rule of thumb for you. So what else is there? So that's kind of just to sort of recap. Like I said, stand in the middle of the room in front of the mic by keeping the microphone above you, pointing down towards your mouth, and you place your pop filter not directly on the microphone, gauging how close you want to be to the mic depending on the kind of situation you're going for. You may want to be particularly close to the mic. And that brings me to my main point. When it comes time to record, take about 15 minutes to experiment with microphone placement. You can learn a lot by like how close or far you are. Even a couple inch difference can make a huge change in the sound. You could try even talking into the microphone off axis like this and see how that says. Yeah, it sounds really good. Yeah, those are some options for you. But that's kind of the idea when it comes to microphone placement. Some other things to think about when it comes time to recording equipment is make sure you can hear yourself. When you are recording on your headphones, make sure that you are loud enough that you can hear yourself through your recording equipment. And yes, I know there are a lot of people who don't like the sound of their own voice. There are things that you can do to make that better. One is by using effects on your voice while you're talking, so like compression, EQ, reverb, makes you sound real pretty. So good. The other thing is mainly just exposure. The more you hear the sound of your own voice through speakers, the more you'll get used to it and go, ah, yes, that's what I sound like. It's okay. Because I know people are used to the sound of their own voice through their head, but it's going to be different. Cable management, as you can see, actually, no, I'm actually doing a very bad job of it, but cable management. Put your cable up and out of the way so that you don't trip over it. Just, yeah, get it out of the way. You don't want to yank your microphone off your stand and break it. That's bad. And then handling mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes when it comes to recording. You're very, very rarely going to deliver a flawless take beginning to end. So depending on what you're doing, I have 2 recommendations for that. First, if you're doing like podcasting, dramatic reading, voice acting, all that stuff that isn't music, I recommend first taking a drink. I recommend basically what I call the redo method, where you have your script in front of you or something, and then you record your performance and blah 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 blah, and oops, I made a mistake. You rewind a little bit, you back yourself up on your script, and then you continue, do it again, and then do it right, and then continue onward. And if you make a mistake, you back up, say it again, and move onward. Lather, rinse, repeat till you get through all of your material, and then you edit out the mistakes in post. It's very easy. Now, when it comes to music, on the other hand, that one requires a special approach, because if you're like going in and then you're backing up and then you're going in and you're backing up whenever you are recording a song, that's going to take you out of the musical mood. That's going to mess with your sense of groove and your sort of appreciation for being in the music headspace. It's not good. So what I recommend instead is doing full takes. You put the marker right at the start of the song, and you record your performance beginning to end, all the way through the song, mistakes and all. Don't stop. You go all the way through, and then you do it 2 more times, 3 full takes, all the way through. And then ideally, what will end up happening is you will make mistakes in different places in each of the recordings, and then you can edit those 3 recordings together in post so that you make one master recording, and it sounds amazing. I generally don't recommend more than 3 takes unless there's like one particular portion that you are really stuck on and you need to keep working on it, then just like punch in that little bit there. But I generally don't recommend more than 3, because after that, it's for 2 reasons mainly. One, you're going to start to get tired. Your throat's going to start to get tired. Your brain is going to start to get tired. You're not going to do your best. The other reason is because it is a pain in the butt to have to edit more than 3 vocal takes at a time, because you're just like, oh, I have to edit through 7 vocal takes. Was it number 6 or number 7? That was better. It's awful. Trust me. Save yourself the pain and just do 3 takes. Anyway. And then another thing is around clipping. Clipping is what happens when the sound going into your microphone or your interface or your plugins or whatever is louder than it can handle. And that causes distortion. It's like clipping, peaking, distortion. It sounds awful. I'm not going to demonstrate what that sounds like because I don't want to hurt your ears. But point being, it sounds extremely amateur. You should not you should not clip your audio unless you're trying to do it on purpose. If you do it by accident, it sounds really, really bad, and you can't fix it. You can't remove clipping once it happens. The only thing that you can do is prevent it, and the way to prevent it is by turning stuff down. It's really easy, but it makes a big difference. What you do is you want to make sure that the sound going into your system is quiet. You want to make sure that at the loudest point that the loudest point of your performance, that you are not clipping, not even close to clipping. Like, you could be screaming into the microphone and you're not even close to the clipping ceiling. And then what you do is you turn up the recording afterward, and it's like, I can't hear myself. Then turn up the output gain on your interface. Let me show you what I mean. Going back in time, checking out the slides and stuff. So as you can see here, you can see my mouse. So we have our audio interface here. This is input gain. This is how loud the audio is going into the interface, and that is what you use to turn yourself up. Potentially, that you set that so that it is conservative, so that it's not too loud, and so that even if you're screaming into the mic, it is not clipping. And then you turn up the output volume here so that you can hear yourself in your headphones, even though your voice is very quiet. It's quiet going in, loud coming out. Because if it's loud going in, it'll be clipping coming out, and that's bad. Anyway, going back to where we were. So that is clipping. It's called gain staging. It's all about making sure that at each stage of your process, of each stage of the recording signal, that there is no chance for clipping. It makes a huge difference. All right, before I dive into mixing, I'm going to take a look to see if there are any other questions. Okay, Okay, wow. Absolutely despised my voice for the better part of a decade. Can confirm lots of exposure to it definitely helped a bunch. I've actually started to like it. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's it's like when I was starting out, I was like, "Oh my god, I sound so bad." But now I'm to the point I can't get enough of the sound of my own voice. Ha! Anyway, uh yeah, don't hard record the effects. That's something else. That's a good point. Yeah, don't what's an ear break? I'll talk about ear breaks later. That's ear fatigue. That's important. Desensitize. Always went outside. Do. Okay, cool. Yeah. So sweet. And then mixing. So this is the part where you've done your recording. You have the sound in the system. Now let's talk about how we can make it sound a little bit better and make it usable. Okay, so the first step in this process is audio editing. It's basically just like if you're editing video, like if any of you have ever used Premiere or iMovie or Sony Vegas or something like that, where you have your video clips and you're like shrinking them down and moving them around and cutting them up and stuff like that. You can do the exact same thing with audio editing. It makes a big difference. And so the main things to look for is like, get rid of the junk, get rid of noise. Like if you make a bad take, if you accidentally like bump your microphone, if like your dog is barking in the background, you can edit those things out, and it really helps improve the quality of your recordings. Another thing, this is big for our podcasting and our dramatic reading friends, avoid dead air. Avoid pauses. Avoid silence that is longer than more than a second or two. So yeah, that's the idea. If there's long pauses, that's a distraction. The ultimate goal here is getting rid of distractions, because that's going to take people out of the experience of enjoying the thing that you're recording. And then if you've made a mistake, or like something was like a bad take, or if you just can't get it to sound good, re-record it. If you have the ability to re-record it, do so. 10 minutes or 10 or 5 minutes of re-recording is going to save you an hour of fighting with a bad recording. It really is frustrating to have. It's very hard to fix this stuff in a mix. If it is botched, then you need to re-record it. So here's an example of what audio editing looks like. As you can see, there are the various clips of the one audio file that have been edited down so that there are no spaces between them. It's sort of definitely kind of streamlined there so that it doesn't have a whole lot of dead air, basically. And then level balancing. This is all about making sure that everything is the right volume level. Now, if it's just one sound source, like a dramatic reading or something like that, it's just make sure that it is sufficiently loud. Like, not loud enough that it's clipping, like it doesn't need to be squashed, but definitely needs to be decently loud. Especially if you're like doing podcasting, make sure you can hear it. Like, test out the audio in your car. Can you hear it over the sound of the car? If you can, you're doing it right. If you have multiple sounds, this is where it's more important. Be sure to balance the vocals with the other sounds. Like, if you have multiple speakers in your podcast and they're recorded separately, make sure that they are balanced and make sure that they sound even with each other. And for the love of God, if you are a podcaster, please make sure your intro music is as loud as the spoken content in your podcast. It is so annoying when your intro music is at this level, but then everything else is down here. It's like you have to like tweak the volume knob. It's so annoying. Just make sure everything's even, and it's all based off of how it sounds. If it sounds even, it's even. But yeah, level balancing. It makes a bigger difference than many people realize when it comes to how like say if you're doing a song, the relative balance between the different elements in the mix makes a humongous difference. And so here is an example of a audio mixing setup. Like, we have This is for a particularly complicated song that I was working on. As you can see, there's every single track, every single sound has its own little volume fader, and I set each one of them relative to everything else. If you're dealing with like one or two audio sources, this is going to be much simpler, but this is kind of the idea, is it's relative level balance. It's a virtual mixing console, basically. Make sure to use big spinny 3D text intros with clipping dubstep music for your quiet /fic. That'll put in the audio for sure. Oh my goodness. Yeah, please don't do that. And then there's EQ and compression. These are the two most important effects for you to worry about. There are lots of other ones that we won't be getting into today because I do want to be conscious of everybody's time. But these are the two ones that everybody should know about because they make a big difference. The first one is the EQ. It's basically, as it says here, your car's stereo on steroids. So like, you know how your car has a low knob, like bass, treble, mid-range. That is what's known as a 3-band graphic equalizer. That's sort of a jargony term for saying like it gives you the ability to control how loud the different aspects of the frequency balance are. An EQ in a digital audio workstation is much more sophisticated. A lot of them can have, instead of 3 bands, they could have 5 or 7 or 10 or 20 bands, and you can move them around as much as you want. You can make them like super loud or super quiet. They can be as wide or as narrow as you want. They are extremely flexible. So let me show you an example. This is a very, very basic looking vocal EQ curve. As you can see, if your vocal is well recorded with a good microphone, it doesn't need much EQ. There's not a whole lot that needs to be done. If it's well recorded, it'll sound good. Two small things I wanted to bring your attention to. One is the small dip, this one here. That is just a little thing that you could do around 400 hertz, give or take, like 300 to 500 hertz, give or take. That is where there's like some like boxy, like low mid frequency that makes it sound muddy and unpleasant. I generally don't like those frequencies, so I like to dip them out a little bit. The important part I want to draw your attention to is this, though, is this big cliff here. If you do no other vocal EQ, always do this. This is called a high-pass filter. What it does, or it's also called a low-cut filter. What it does is it removes all of the frequencies below a certain point. And so that is super important because like a lot of the ultra low frequencies in a recorded vocal are completely useless. So things like bumping a microphone, a stray plosive, or a truck going past, or like the vibration of the room because you happen to have a very aggressive air conditioner. All of those things get picked up in the ultra low frequencies of the recording. A high-pass filter set at about 100 hertz will roll off everything below that point. And so without impacting pretty much any of the frequencies of the actual vocal itself. So it'll clean it up, it'll make it sound less boomy, it'll make it sound less messy. If you have a particularly high voice, you could set the high-pass filter higher, like 170 hertz is a good spot for that. So yeah, if you do nothing else, a high-pass filter is huge. I encourage you to actually put a high-pass filter on pretty much every track in your mix if you're making a song, except for obviously your kick drum and your bass sound. So yeah, because it'll definitely clean it up. The high-pass filter is magic. Going to take a drink real quick. The other thing is the compressor. The compressor is a tool that is used to basically tame the volume of your vocal. If there are parts of your vocal that are really loud and parts that are really quiet, you're not going to be able to hear everything correctly. So you can use a compressor to turn down the peaks of the louder parts of the audio. As you can see here, that's what's going on with that purple stuff, like the little arrows. This arrow is pointing to an area that is experiencing a lot of what they call gain reduction. And what we're doing is we're turning down these loud peaks so that they're more in line with the quieter peaks. And that makes the overall volume signal more even. Now, yes, you've turned it down. You've turned down the loud parts. But then there's also this output gain control, which is used to turn up the overall level. So basically, you're taking what would be a mountain, squashing it down to a hill, and then raising sea level. That it sounds so, it's a weird analogy, but that kind of is what it is. I'm not going to necessarily get into how compressors work here because they're complicated. There's a lot to get into. But I have, if you're interested, thank you for being on YouTube with me. There is a video on my channel for how to use a compressor on your vocal. So I would encourage you to look that up. I have a list of my tutorials and a playlist on my channel. So lots of good information. Indeed, for all of this stuff, if you want to go into even more detail for all the things that we've covered here, I have an entire playlist of this content on my YouTube channel. I would encourage you to check it out. Last things about mixing. I know we're running close on time. I don't want to go too much over. One, mix at low volume levels. This goes back to what one of our folks in the chat was talking about before about ear fatigue, where your ears get tired from listening to the same sounds over and over and over again. You're less likely to get ear fatigue if you turn it down. Now, why don't you want ear fatigue? It's because, A, you start to get a headache and you're just like, it's not good. But more to the point, it makes it so that you can't hear your sound correctly. It makes it so that you're like, it starts to color the way you perceive your audio. So it's like, there have been times where it's like, I've been listening to something for an extended period, and then I go away for like 20 minutes and then come back and it sounds completely different. Like the level balance is way off. It's like, why is this so loud? And then I turn it down. So ear fatigue messes with your ability to hear your audio accurately. So mixing at low volume levels helps with that. And also taking breaks. I usually do it where I do mixing stuff for 10 minutes and then I take a 15-minute break in between. That gives my ears a chance to relax, and that makes a huge big difference. Like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes until you get through everything. Another thing, use reference material. Have an example of what you consider to be a really good recording or a really good song to mix against, like something that was ideally professionally recorded. Like, say, if you're doing dubstep, grab like a Skrillex song or a Virtual Riot song. If you're doing podcasting, see if you can get like Radiolab and use that as an example, and bring that directly into your software so that you can directly compare between the two, what you're working on versus what the professional stuff sounds like. And that will give you an idea of like level balance, frequency balance, all of those good things will make it easier for you to understand what you're doing, and so that you can produce a good final product. And the last one, if you remember nothing else, if it sounds good, do it. If what you're producing, what comes out of your speakers that you have made sounds good to you, you're doing the right thing. If like all of these things that I have suggested to you are ultimately guidelines, they are not hard and fast rules. Your situation could be different from mine. And like what may sound bad on my setup may sound absolutely amazing on yours. So if it sounds good to you, you're doing the right thing. Anyway, so let's go to questions. I'm going to move into this here. Scrolling through the stuff, checking out things. Oh wow. Thank you, moderators, for being amazing. Let's give a hand to Denabella and Librace, or Librace? Librace? Pronunciation is hard. Give them a round of applause. I always went outside and just sat in the trees for 5 minutes between long takes. Helped you defocus from the take. Come back to it fresh and hear everything. Yeah, that's huge. That makes a big difference. Knowledge. I'm glad this is helpful for you. Pausing for dramatic effect. Yeah, if you're doing a dramatic reading, like that can still be distracting if the pause is like longer than maybe 3 seconds, because then people will think your recording broke. They'll think that oh, did my podcasting app freeze? Did Audible break or something like that? Make sure to use don't give away the industry secrets. So a high pass filter reduces floor noise. Okay, so I might want some clarification about that. When you say floor noise, do you mean the noise floor, or do you mean noise on the, or do you mean noise of people walking on the floor? Because if it's noise of people walking on the floor, like boom, 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 yes, that'll do that. The noise floor is the lowest possible noise, like background noise that is a result of the recording process. High-pass filters don't impact the noise floor. You're going to want a noise gate to deal with that. Like if you have a microphone that has a background hiss or something, or just like in the background, you either want to use like a noise removal tool, like in Audacity or like FL Studio's Edison can do, or you would want to use a noise gate in order to deal with that. Once listened to my recordings, so long that my voice had turned into an AI. Interesting. The ponies, yes, Holopone and Pixel. They are delightful and adorable and so cute. Yeah, noise floor. Yeah, you want to use noise gate or noise removal tool. Okay, cool. Any other questions? I know we're a little bit over, so that's all the material that I have. If people want to get in touch with me afterward, here's my socials. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll hang around for a bit. Otherwise, yeah, if you guys want to go check out the rest of the events, feel free to do so. There's a link to the convention website in the chat, in the description below, as well as a link to the charity. Please donate to the charity. We want to help those kids. All right, beverage. Glad this was helpful for everyone. Ah, good stuff. Yeah. Gonna give people a chance. Yeah. I hope everyone has fun today. And enjoys the rest of the convention. It's going to be a good time. I love online conventions, and I've just been seeing all of this amazing effort being put into PoniesOnline. Like, I was there, at ground zero when this thing got started. Just watching everybody come together, rising from the ashes of HaCon, and making just this amazing, this website, awesome mascots, coming up with all of this great programming. I am so happy to see it all come together like this. Cool. All right. I'm gonna. If anybody, last call for questions. I want to give people a minute or so, just to see if they have any last questions, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. I think that's good. Do you like to eat the mic? Not most of the time, but if there are certain instances where it is appropriate. Favorite pony and why is it Scootaloo? Favorite pony and why is it Scootaloo? I mean, Scootaloo's pretty great. She's kind of adorable, little scoots. Anyway, so on that note, I'm going to wrap it up here and call it good. Thank you everyone for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your con, and until next time, have fun and keep making sound.